I will talk here only about passive microclimates using silica gel as the conditioning medium. I mean, obviously, you can go to all sorts of elaborate high-tech lengths to maintain a microclimate. But if you can build a reasonably airtight enclosure, all you need is silica gel in order to maintain a pretty constant humidity. It's fairly easy to build an enclosure with an air exchange rate of less than 1 volume per day. With skill, cases can be made with 1 air exchange in 6 weeks. The second thing you need is silica gel. Think of silica gel as ballast. It doesn't magically produce a specific humidity in a case, except briefly, but acts as ballast to slow down the rate of change in the humidity. Imagine a case in a 70-degree gallery. We're going to do an analogy here to temperature. Imagine a case in a 70-degree gallery into which you put a 50-pound block of lead, which you've heated to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The block will quickly heat the air in the case to 100 degrees. And then the block and the air in the case will gradually cool until eventually they approach the gallery temperature. If you could insulate the case perfectly, the temperature in the case would remain at 100 degrees. Similarly, once the case reaches the 70-degree gallery temperature, if you raise the temperature in the gallery to 100, the case will take a long time to heat up. This is how silica gel works, except, of course, that we're talking about humidity and not temperature, and we're talking about air seal rather than insulation. Silica gel has the wonderful property that it seeks to maintain a constant humidity, which is a function of its moisture content. Silica gel can be conditioned to a specific humidity simply by placing it in an environment of the desired humidity until it reaches equilibrium. When you put the silica gel into the case, it will condition the air in the case to that humidity level. If the case is in a dry macro environment, as the dry air replaces the air in the case, the silica gel will give up moisture, moderating the effect of the infiltration. If the case is in a moist macro environment, the gel will adsorb moisture, again, moderating the effect. The amount of silica gel required for a given case is a function of the case volume, the air exchange rate, the average difference between the desired humidity and the gallery humidity, how much deviation from target you're willing to accept, and how often you're willing to replace the gel or recondition it. If the average gallery humidity over a period of months is an acceptable number, and you use enough silica gel to moderate the short-term fluctuation, you may never need to recondition the gel. We're working on a project right now for some cases that are going to Taichung, Taiwan, where the humidity ranges all the way from 74% to 78%. So it's always humid, and unless you have a really well-sealed case in an environment like that with a reasonably large amount of silica gel, you are never going to keep your objects at 45%. Silica gel comes in many types and forms. The best type for microclimates is type 2 gel, which is a beaded silica gel. Little spherical things. The amorphous crystals of silica gel are generally not appropriate, which is to say that they don't have the right linearity within the range that we would want museum objects to be, which is generally from 35 to 55%. The amorphous crystals work pretty well at very low humidities, but not well at higher humidities. It comes as loose beads, in pouches, like that, or in cassettes, like that. Those are the kinds that we make. There are all kinds of other kinds of cassettes of silica gel. It's important to expose as much surface area of the gel as possible, particularly if the case is not well sealed. A mass of silica gel that is more than an inch thick is not using its full potential, as the air will find it difficult to reach the deep areas. It's important to provide adequate airspace for circulation between the gel compartment and the exhibit compartment of a case. We found that the only really reliable way to build a well-sealed case is to keep the design concept simple. Building an airtight box is not difficult. Attaching it to a panel of material with a gasket is not difficult. Creating a seal in more than one plane at a time is very difficult. Like on a four-sided case, trying to seal it on the back and the bottom at the same time is a lot more difficult than just a box and a plane. The box may be transparent and the plane opaque, as in this case, or vice versa. The seal is created at the joint between the box and the plane. Here's another example of an enclosure for a two-dimensional or 2.5-dimensional, we used to call them, objects, such as panel paintings or documents. Here's an example of a case that will be inserted into a hole in the wall. In this case, the case is opaque and the plane is transparent. This case is made of D-bond on aluminum angle held together with epoxy, which can be used as the exhibit cavity in either a new or retrofit application. The insert is completely self-contained, sealed, and conditioned unit. The fiber optic luminaires at the top are airtight. Of course, you can also make such a box out of Marvel seal covered plywood and caulk it with silicone. Here's an opaque box with a transparent face. Note that the holes in the face are outside the gasketed area, which preserves the seal. Another thing we often do when you need to put holes in a vitrine, for example, to use security screws, we'll drill a hole right through the vitrine and put a little Lexan Band-Aid on the inside of the hole to block it off, so that you can now use the entire thickness of the acrylic for capturing your screw. But you put a little 5 or 10 thousandths thick Lexan Band-Aid on the inside. Drilling blind holes in acrylic is difficult. This is a data logger graph of a well-sealed case. The red line is the humidity in the room, and the green line is the humidity in the case. The case contains silica gel under the deck that had been conditioned to 42%. We can see that while the RH in the room varied from about 30 to 65% over the 2-week period, the RH in the case varied only from 38 to 42. In fact, the small variations in the RH in the case were due largely to changes in room temperature, not to air leakage. As the temperature goes up, the RH goes down, and vice versa. If the temperature changes too rapidly, the silica gel will be unable to respond quickly enough to perfectly buffer the very short-term variations in RH. A simple and inexpensive way of monitoring RH in a case is to use a cobalt salt card. These are readily available from conservation supply houses. The card is read by observing at what point on the scale the color changes from blue to pink. I recommend putting one of these inside every sealed case somewhere where it can be seen from the outside. Here are just a few pictures of typical sealed cases, all of which use the box and plane concept. There's just a drawing showing, these are some cases we made for the Brooklyn Museum. And there's the case, which the object deck is supported by those, since I'm not in front of the screen, I can't point at it, but the entire hollow area in that case is available for filling with silica gel. And there's the case with the vitrine on it, without the deck in it yet. And there's the completely finished case.